If you spend enough time studying frontline diaries, battlefield reports, or veteran interviews, you start to notice something. The most interesting stories aren't always about the big loud weapons that defined World War II. They're often about the quiet ingenuity that kept men alive when supplies ran thin, orders changed by the hour, and improvisation became just as important as firepower. For about a minute here, let me set the scene for why this matters. A soldier in 1943 didn't always have the luxury of a fully stocked supply line. Mud, weather, broken logistics, sudden ambushes, these things stripped resources away fast. Yet the fighting didn't stop. In those moments, soldiers relied on the oldest human tool of all creativity. They built weapons, traps, distractions, and survival tools out of whatever they could get their hands on. These weren't gimmicks, they were battlefield necessities that shaped real outcomes. And, if you're a prepper, historian, or someone who studies conflict with a critical eye, these improvised weapons aren't just fascinating. They're lessons in adaptability, resourcefulness, and survival in unpredictable environments. Now, let's get into the 7 most unusual hacks, all rooted deeply in documented World War II fieldcraft, each offering practical insights you can still apply today. Soldiers sometimes turned ration cans into fragmentation devices when grenades ran low. When grenades were scarce, infantrymen, especially in the Pacific, used empty ration cans filled with nails, powdered gunpowder, and torn pieces of metal to produce small, improvised fragmentation charges. These weren't designed to replace standard grenades, but to buy time or break an enemy advance in close quarters. The principle behind it is simple: containment, ignition, and fragmentation. Modern preppers could study this as a lesson in understanding how fragmentation really works, rather than simply relying on factory-made gear. If you were forced to create a defensive perimeter with limited tools, the principle of combining a container, dense shrapnel, and a controlled ignition source can help you understand blast mechanics and how to create deterrence without relying on sophisticated parts. Troops often modified entrenching tools into deadly melee weapons for trench and bunker clearing. The humble E-tool wasn't just for digging. Soldiers filed the edges into sharp blades, creating a compact, durable chopping weapon ideal for brutal close combat. Some even coated the edge with soot or oil to make it cut cleaner through cloth and resist rust. The value here isn't in copying the weapon itself. It's in understanding why it worked. In a survival situation, anything with a solid spine and a sharpenable edge can serve double duty. With controlled sharpening, you can turn a digging tool, a machete, or even a heavy-duty pry bar into a reliable close-quarters tool. It's about understanding the material and how to manipulate it, rather than relying solely on specialized blades. Soldiers converted bicycle parts into improvised tripwire alarms and directional traps. During the chaotic retreats across Europe and the Pacific, soldiers took bicycle components, springs, wires, gears, and used them to build noisy perimeter alarms or to connect ignition systems to homemade explosives. So, the practical lesson here is that simple mechanical tension systems, well, they remain one of the most reliable and low-tech security tools out there. If you were, say, building a silent perimeter today out in the wild, learning how to use tension, weight, and release mechanisms from scrap could really give you an edge. The essence of this hack, honestly, lies in understanding that anything with gears or springs can store and release energy predictably. Now, during the war, units sometimes fashioned Molotov-style anti-armor bottles using fuel, rubber and glass when actual anti-tank weapons were out of reach. The Molotov cocktail, often gets oversimplified, but WWII soldiers improved it quite a bit by adding rubber or tar to make the burning mixture cling to armor. Soviet and Finnish troops in particular, they deployed thousands of these against early war tanks. What's valuable today is the chemistry lesson. Viscosity, ignition reliability, and glass integrity all matter. In a survival context, you won't be going after tanks, but the principle of creating long-burning fire sources for signaling controlled burns or emergency heat can be adapted. Understanding how additives change burn characteristics gives you real flexibility in any austere environment. Infantrymen sometimes turned broken rifles into single-shot pipe guns or firing rigs. When rifles were shattered or bent, soldiers didn't always discard them. Some units repurposed working firing pins and chambers into improvised single-shot devices, often used for traps or last-line defense. What this teaches is mechanical literacy. Every weapon, even a broken one, is a combination of pressure containment, ignition, and projectile guidance. For modern survivalists, this reinforces the value of understanding basic firearm mechanics. With enough knowledge, you can salvage parts, diagnose failures, or create simple firing rigs for signaling or non-lethal deterrence. Troops use soap, cloth, and wire to create suppressors for short bursts during raids. Improvised suppressors weren't common, but they did exist. Some reconnaissance units stuffed containers with oiled cloth or shaved soap to reduce muzzle flash and slightly muffle a single shot. They weren't Hollywood silencers. They were momentary tactical advantages to avoid exposing a whole team. The principle you can carry forward is about noise direction and sound dampening. In practical prepping, this might translate to learning how different materials absorb or redirect sound, whether you're trying to move quietly at night, set up stealth camps, or minimize tool-related noise in a sensitive situation. Soldiers improvise spear-like weapons from bayonets, poles, and tent stakes for ambushes and nighttime defense. In regions with heavy jungle or low resources, troops extended reach by attaching bayonets to bamboo poles, tent stakes, or salvaged wood. These weren't primitive throwbacks. They were fast solutions to keep enemy patrols at a distance. The core lesson is leverage and reach. In survival situations, extending a tool's reach dramatically improves safety, whether you're defending a campsite, dealing with dangerous animals, or probing uncertain terrain. Understanding how to properly secure two objects and distribute force through a longer shaft is a foundational bushcraft skill. These 7 hacks aren't gimmicks. They're reminders that innovation often comes from the moments when everything else runs out. That mindset is what makes World War II fieldcraft so valuable for modern preppers and historians alike. You learn how people adapted under pressure, and you can apply those principles long after the original battlefield has faded. If you found this guide useful, subscribe to The Prepper Historian, share it with fellow enthusiasts, and keep exploring the forgotten ingenuity that shaped real survival during the world's most demanding conflict.